This is Bam Electric Ghost, and we're on the air. And I'll make sure I got your name right. Is Narajan Nota? Is that the right way to say it?
Yeah, that's right.
Okay,
Yes,
great.
you got it.
So you are with your website's right there, brightshininglight.com, and we're going to talk more about what you do. But just
Yes.
before we do that, we do have a sponsor, Newsly, and Newsly is a podcast app that basically takes video podcasts and converts them to audio, and they also take the news. So if you use coupon code GHOST, you get 1 month free premium subscription. We're going to be on Newsly within an hour after this broadcast is done. So we wanted to tell our people about that. So this is the first time we've had you on the air. How are you doing tonight? Are you feeling okay? Are you having a good day?
I'm doing great. Yes. Thank you for having me on. It's quite a production to have it go live, I guess. But yeah, I'm excited to get into the conversation.
So just tell the audience kind of like your what makes you different from other spiritual teachers, like in what you do. So people maybe have a background in what is you actually offer to your to people or clients that you work with.
I offer individuals to align with their soul, to align with their soul on a deeper level, and to expand their consciousness to a higher realm by connecting on an energetic level with the planet, the plants, and the tangible things that we have, but also on a grander scale of connecting with other human beings and other people we might be in relationship with, and have those relationships be much smoother, much easier, and in flow as they are really designed to be.
So how do people come to find about your services? How do you get people to know about what you do?
I do blog articles, I'm online, I'm through various social media sites, be it Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn. So I'm on a number of different platforms. I actually have my own podcast too, which is called Master of Your Crafts.
Oh, great.
So I am out in the community from that standpoint, but I also host groups and individuals who are looking for more clarity in life and who are potentially overwhelmed with what life presents to them.
So, where are you actually located in the US? Do you primarily operate out of that, like where you're physically located in what state,
I'm
or is it
actually
beyond that?
located in Toronto, Canada. So I'm not
Oh,
even
wow.
in the
So,
US, I'm in
you're not in the
Toronto,
US.
Canada.
Mhm.
Uh-huh. But I operate from my computer. We have this beautiful thing called the internet, which is connected us, and that's how I do my sessions is all through online.
So, you have a global clientele. It's not just Canadian. You go beyond Canada.
Okay, just lost your audio.
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you now. There you go.
Okay. The question I guess is do you have a global reach to either your client base, or did it initially start in Canada, or because it's on the net, you reach the multiple countries?
I do reach multiple countries. So I have clients in Britain and I have clients in the US, as well as tutoring clients on the other side of the globe. But that's a little bit more challenging purely because of the time zone difference. But
Yeah, I was wondering.
it is essentially it is global for sure.
Yeah, because like I ended up starting to like interview people in Australia and Japan, and I had
Yeah,
to adjust my time.
yeah.
So is it your working hours to when you do this? Do you adjust to like clients that if you had clients in Japan or the Middle East or other areas that are totally different time zones? Do you adjust? Do you say, well, I want to just stay in my Canadian time zone?
Well, I make it workable as best as I can because I do understand there's a need there. And my objective is to be of service to those who are seeking support and who are requiring a need. So if it means me augmenting and working in the evening a little bit here and there, then absolutely I will do that because how else can I serve these people, especially if they have reached out to me from a place
Mhm.
of pain and they're looking for a resolution and I know I can offer that for them. So it's
So
part of
how
the
did you
process.
get into yeah, how did you get into this type of work, and what makes it different from other spiritual teachers, or or guides or like maybe shamans, because I come from like a Native American background of part Cherokee and Blackfoot Indian, Native indigenous tribe, and we have the understanding of like the medicine men and shaman type roles. But I was wondering, like, how did you get into this type of therapy and work?
Sometimes I'm a great believer that sometimes we just know what we're here to do. And when we fall into it and it comes on our path, it fits so well and it activates so many parts of us that puts us in a space of, okay, this is what I'm here to do. And I got glimpses of that very early on. I was very fortunate to get glimpses of that experiencing, that witnessing, not only for myself, but the other people I would be engaging with, seeing their aha, seeing their awarenesses and the peace, but also the clarity that they would gain from the conversation. And I just followed that process. Did it take me a while to get onto that process? Absolutely. I'd spent probably a good part of 15 years in corporate, in for-profit and not-for-profit sectors. So I know what the world looks like on a
Mhm.
business level, very saturated in that space. But that allowed me to navigate through the tools that I use in my own day-to-day life, and also the ones that I share with others, with my clients, of how to navigate this dense third dimensional world that we live in, is from the tools that I have learned innately, but also learned from my journey of evolution and growth. So it's all a process of learning as we go, but also recognizing what's going to work where and finessing that so it's a bite sizable, doable, tangible piece for my clients and other people involved. Does that answer your question?
So can maybe Yeah, yeah, I understand you. So you found a way to get into it. I think it's similar for art. I mean, I'm into the kind of creative space. I'm a producer, I'm a musician, and we think of like the muse. We think of like the
Mm-hmm.
universe brings things to us as
Mm-hmm.
musicians. We're like
Mm-hmm.
channels for that. We can channel it.
Yes.
So I can understand
Yes.
empaths and spiritual leaders and people, spiritual guides have the same kind of thing. In my opinion, it's like a universal vibe you can come into. We talk about music, we talk about universal keys that somehow
Mm-hmm.
musicians can tap into, and then we can channel it. And sometimes you don't know where it came from. It just you picked up on it. And so, do you
Yes.
feel like in your work you have like a spiritual key that you pick up on, and you can feel maybe it's multiple keys, but you feel like you it's part of you. You're born to do it in the same way
Uh,
maybe musicians born to be a musician.
Absolutely, absolutely. And that is the connection, I would say, with a higher part of ourself, with an expanded version of consciousness that we have access to, is what we ultimately end up tapping into when the physical and the mind part of who we are steps aside and allows this wisdom and allows this greater consciousness to flow through this physical meat suit, as I often say, to be the conduit, to allow that
Hmm.
channel to flow through. So I do agree, and I think it is connecting with a higher source, a higher aspect of our soul, evolved soul, that puts us into that space. And there are many different layers of our soul that can enhance different parts of our lives. So whether you're doing a music piece and you're channeling the muse from that, or you're navigating a relationship, that might be another component of your soul that can assist you and guide you in a relationship or another challenge that may show up. So there are other parts of us that'll show up when we request the support for that.
So maybe for people who don't fully understand what a spiritual guide is, can you kind
Mhm.
of give people like a maybe a your own vision of what you do so people
A-
understand can kind of relate to it?
Absolutely. Essentially, I support individuals to navigate this thing called life. I'm a great believer that every single thing that happens to us happens for a reason. There's a reason why certain people show up in our lives. There's a reason why we have the family, the siblings, the children that we do have. And all of that is really navigated and instigated for the evolution of our soul and the evolution
So,
of the planet. And it's our responsibility to be able to bring those two worlds together in human form. So, my role is to align each individual with their soul and present them with a different perspective of how to look at what we would say in life is a challenge that they are feeling in life: overwhelm, lack of confidence, unfulfilled, lost in this world, or whatever that may be presented. And I would present that as an opportunity for you to clear the clutter of life so you can then be more aligned with something greater and allow that wisdom, that flow, as you talked about earlier, to come through you with much more ease and much more grace.
I'm a Buddhist, and so I believe in the law of cause and effect and karma in a
Mm-hmm.
way. I practice Nichiren Daishonin Buddhism.
Mm-hmm.
And one question
Okay.
I was looking through your information, and you're talking to dive in core into karmic issues. And one of the things that we've always believed, well, I believe in my practice, we believe that sometimes your karma is like you're actually living like your karma of your whole family, of your whole
Yes.
generational line. And I don't know if you believe in that level of karmic connection. Is the karma that people deal with? Do you believe that karmic issues can be part of a whole like generational line, or is it the individual?
Intergenerational karma, intergenerational trauma, which is an element of karma, is real. And for each of us who are witnessing it, it's our responsibility to clear it. So you would clear it not only for yourself, for your own soul evolution, but you also have the fortunate opportunity to clear it for your entire family. So often karma is positioned as a negative aspect of life, but there's also a positive aspect to karma as well. So the country that we live in, the accessibility to the tools and equipment and clean water and all those pieces that we have access to are perhaps elements of our good karma.
Hmm. Yeah, it's true.
So
Yeah, a
we
lot of
would to
times, like,
look at both components of that. Sorry.
yeah, because the position you're in, at least in our practice, is sometimes the position you're in, you're kind of because it's kind of not that it's predetermined, but you're dealing with a karmic history that why you might be where you are is because of
Mhm.
that karmic history. And some people don't like that idea because then
That's
it's
right.
like, well, how am I going to change that if I had nothing? I didn't actually have a hand in it. It was my forefathers, or like
Yeah.
how do I handle that? And there's still things that you can do, like the law of cause and effect. Like if you go forward with positive energy, then you could
Mhm.
get positive return because of the law of cause and effect if you believe in that.
Right.
But I'm wondering,
Right.
like, so how do you go about solving that, like a karmic issue that could be anxiety, depression, self-esteem, fear,
Mhm.
all those different
Mhm.
types of things. Fear seems to be a big thing
Mhm.
with a lot of those situations. I was just wondering how you go about handling each one of those, or you take them on one at a time.
We take them on one at a time because doing them all at once, it can take a lifetime or even a few lifetimes to overcome them. So one at a time is way more manageable and doable potentially. Uh, being able to see the results in certain principles and tools that I use to be able to take on some of the heavy emotions that show up, like fear and anxiety. They'll show up for us to ultimately put us in a place of self acceptance and self love. But this isn't new of what we've heard. I mean, every spiritualist and maybe astrologist or Buddhism or whatever element you want to use, esoteric principles, they're all saying the same, is how can you deepen the element of your self-love and awareness? But perhaps my additional layer to that is the reason why you would embody those components of self-love is for your own soul's evolution and the expansion and the clearing of all the fear and the lack of self-love that has been passed down from generations to generations, which is presented you the opportunity to clear it today. So somebody going through a process of anxiety and it's showing up in real form in your own life would have shown up in your ancestors, obviously in different surroundings and in different environments and different scenarios, but the crux of that emotion would have been highlighted very significantly, which is why it's been passed down, because it wasn't healed from their component.
So one of the questions I had is like, when you work, does it affect you? How does it change you as a person,
Once you work
as a
through some of
spiritual
the
guide?
emotions, once you work through
Mhm.
some of the heavy emotions that we all feel and that we're all faced with on a day-to-day basis, because that's the world that we live in, and essentially that's part of our role as human beings having life on this planet, it's almost like clearing the clutter. When we create a space of stillness and we go into a space of perhaps minimalistic living, there's less influences for our attention. There's less conflict for what we do on a day-to-day basis and how we move through the world. Our emotions and our experiences are reflected in the same way. When we're able to manage our own emotion of anxiety, fear, abandonment, lack of self-esteem, lack of love, when we can manage those and accept them on a deeper level as part of our soul's journey, it clears the clutter in our energy body field. But when we resist it, it continues to compound the clutter in our own mental thinking. So therefore, the relationships that we have outside of ourselves with others, it compounds it. And it creates more friction.
Mm. So I guess I'm wondering, like, from like if you go to a psychiatrist and a psychologist, I've heard like sometimes psychiatrists have to have their own
Mhm.
psychiatrist because they're dealing with so
Yes.
much trauma. So I'm wondering,
Mhm.
how do you like unload if you dealing with a lot of people's emotional trauma and you're getting all that coming through you and you're helping
Right.
people, but you're getting affected by that as well. What's your coping mechanism? Do you have a spiritual guide that you go to kind of unburden yourself from that, or you found other mechanisms to do that?
One of the biggest reasons why I got into this space was I can recognize that you have to go through your own healing journey first. In order to be a positive support, polarity is a terminology that I use to balance somebody out of their pain. You have to have gone through your own first and healed it. And I'm a true believer, and I've seen it, and I've done it for many years, for the past 20 years, is going through my own journey of healing in order for me to be a fully clear vessel to support others in theirs. And when I support others in their journey of healing, I don't take it on.
Mm.
I act as a conduit to allow that energy to be channeled through me, which is what I teach individuals to do for themselves. When I have my clients, I'm empowering them to do that for them. It's not, I'm going to be here to dump my stuff onto you. It's,
Okay.
these are the tools, this is how you use energy, and this is how to do it for you.
Okay,
That
so
is, I think, the differentiator.
yeah, it's a totally different concept than what maybe psychologists and psychiatry has, because sometimes they actually do have to have a way to,
Yes,
unbound themselves from that. But if you're dealing with the concept of energy and learn how to
yeah,
have it pass through, it's like an emotional like judo. It's like you're learning how to not to get it so that you can react to it in a very positive way where you're not taking it on. You actually
that's right,
are able to kind of deflect it in a positive way that's not going to hurt you, but actually you
that's
can
right.
still help people.
And that takes some practice, right? It's not something that happens overnight. Because we are human beings, we are empathic and emotional beings that we want to help people. When we see people in strife, we want to support them. And as empaths, it's how do I pull that out of them? But really, that's not the role of
Mm.
an empath. It's beyond that, but it's having the right understanding, it's having the right mechanism and the tools to be able to get out of the way and allow the energy to do what it's supposed to do. But that in itself is a big learning curve for us how to do it. But one thing that I do want to highlight is we often believe that we've let go of stuff and we've sent it to wherever and it's gone. Or I'm not thinking about that any thought anymore. Contrary to, or should I say, in alignment to psychiatrists and psychologists and all of those professions, they do an amazing job for those people who are ready to receive it. However, they only operate from the mind. So they only operate from here. And the work
Mhm.
that I do, I take it on a deeper level. So now I'm engaging with the heart. Now I'm engaging with the energy, with something beyond the mind. And that's where often people can get stuck, which is why that domino effect of depression and anxiety and things can really take a downward spiral. And when
Yeah, it's too
you
much in the headspace.
calibrate the mind
Yeah.
and the heart, it's a very different process of healing, a
Yeah,
very
they kind
different
of like, I
process.
think in terms of like musicians, we tend to deal in the heart space, right?
Mhm.
Like there
Yes,
music is somewhat mathematical, right? So there is
absolutely.
some headspace to it, but a lot of it is heart and spirit. So a
Yes,
lot of things so you can get caught up in the technical aspects of it, and then you can get, really caught in the weeds. I've tended to try to let the universe tell me what I'm going to do. I kind of don't come in with a plan. I just do it. And I feel like
yes,
a lot of times I've run into other musicians and they're too into the nitty gritty of it. And I'm like, why can't you
mhm,
just feel it? Right? Why can't you have
that's
like
right.
the idea of soul, like soul music? Why is it
Yes,
soul music? Because I can go with a bunch of jazz guys and soul guys, and we can just get together and we don't even talk. We can actually just look at each other and we kind of know what to do. And then
mhm,
other people are like, "Oh, what's the chord chart? What's the key?" And like, I don't gotta tell you that. When I'm with the soul band, like I don't have to say that. They just know. It is
that's right.
it's a different type of feeling. It's kind of like this idea that we're all feeling this soul, we're feeling that heart. And I think I can kind of equate that with what maybe you're doing with the energy, because I feel that's energy too. It's a different type of
Absolutely.
energy. But
It is. And it's beautiful when it translates from your perspective like that, of it coming out from a synergistic way of communicating with your own peers. And it is an energy, and the vibrational frequency of the note in itself will dictate to the feeling that you're alluding to or that you're teasing out in creating um, some music, because all of those are going to equate to emotions that you're going to want to trigger in the listener, but also triggered in yourself, which then gets translated into a tangible piece called music. So we're talking the same language, but perhaps just a different instrument, if you will.
yeah, I think it's a lot of people that get. Well, I always like it when I can actually I meet a musician there's no words, right? We just vibe, and there's
Mhm.
somehow we just know what to do. Like you can sit with a drummer and they just know what to play. I don't even have to tell
Yeah,
them. I just
yeah,
play something on my keyboard or on the guitar, and they automatically know what goes with it. I don't got to go and dictate to them, oh, do this, do this, do this. It
right.
seems like there's this. automatic recognition is like, oh, I know what goes with that. I kind of feel it, and I know what
Yes.
to do. And that unspoken language is worth so much to like a lot of
Mhm.
artists when you find the people who automatically get you without having to verbally tell them. It is like unbelievably cool. It's
Yes,
such a rewarding feeling because it feels like you've caught into that vibe, that frequency. You've actually
that's right.
have other people, and they're not. It's like telepathic. You don't even have to say
Mhm,
it. And
mhm.
people say, "Well, you should talk." Yeah, you should talk, but sometimes there's some things that are unsaid that are really beautiful. And I think that that's why I try to connect with. It seems like in your practice as a spiritual leader, you have to kind of feel your way through
Yes.
it and then know what to do, right? And maybe it's like stream of consciousness.
That's right. It is. It is. And that's exactly what you guys are doing when you get into a room. You're operating from an element of consciousness, a dimension of a frequency, which aligns you all. And I'm on a more third dimensional realm. We've all seen it where you wake up and you have a bad day, and all of a sudden, every single person you meet is also having a bad day.
Mm,
And
yeah.
that's again connecting to that same consciousness, that same vibrational frequency, but it's just showing you a different level of it. So when you're in the studio or when you're jamming with other people, they're all in the same place. And I do a similar thing too, of when I bring my clients in, I'm elevating their consciousness, I'm elevating their awareness so we can be in a more synergistic way and support them so they're not getting caught in all the clutter and they can see the clutter for what it is and clear it.
So one of the things I always wonder is like the discordance. Like, how do you deal like in music? When we know when we hit the wrong note, it's like discordant. Like and
Mhm.
sometimes we actually go toward the discordant. There's
Yes,
some types of
yes,
music that where if you're in that fusion and free jazz, we will actually
yeah,
go discordant because it's a little bit of cacophony is actually part
right,
of the whole thing, right? And it's
right,
actually good. And and
yeah,
in art in that types of form of music, you can actually go with it and it's okay. Other types of
hmm,
forms of music, well, you can't have that. So you have to get rid of all the discordance. You can't have it at all. Everything's got to
right,
be really tight. And so I've always been kind of like a little bit of discordance, like a little bit of chaos, and then be able to come back to something more controlled. Um, I guess in your practice, how do you deal with people who are in that kind of discordant space and get them to a more harmony?
perhaps I'm more of in the space of there's got to be more harmony. The discordant parts of that show up in life, be it a conversation with somebody or you just heard some news that you don't like and it's triggered an emotion in you, that is a discordance from your definition. But that is also an opportunity to say it's a challenge, but what can I learn from it and who needs to heal from it? Because it wouldn't have showed up on my radar if it wasn't a discordant within my soul evolution,
Hmm.
within my part of life lesson. There wouldn't have been a match. So just as you're in a room with your people, there's a match there, there's a synergy there, there's a flow there that organically happens. And that is what I feel every single client and every single body should have access to is that flow so that discordant that shows up as a flag to say, how can I heal this? What is the opportunity? Am I being tested? And if I'm being tested, how can I overcome it and win this test to clear more clutter from my life?
So in your practice, do you review people's dreams as like as the world or the universe trying to tell people things? Because sometimes things come to you in a dream, and there's a
Mhm.
lot of analysis of dreams and all kinds of therapy.
Yes,
But I was
yes.
wondering, in your therapy, in as a spiritual, how does that come to play? Do you do dream analysis, or is that part of it?
There's many different components that I do bring into practice. So I bring components of astrology, astronomy, some sort of personality testing to to paint a broader picture of who this soul is for people for clients to understand themselves on a deeper level. So I use all those facets, and dream analysis is a big portion of that. So the Jung therapy, the Freud therapy, all of those components, I look into it, but really lean into the intuitive space. What is my own intuition telling me about that component of my dream? And how much of that is influenced from what actually really happened in real life yesterday? And how much of that is really a bigger message from my higher self? So to be able to sift out what it is and what's the message, those are dialogues that we have had with clients, absolutely.
Is there any use of like spirit animals in your type of analysis? Like at least in Native American culture, there's a lot of the eagles and a lot of different animals, deer, almost every animal within Cherokee or Blackfoot
Mhm.
legacy. There's a spirit animal that represents something, and if it actually shows up in front of you, it actually means something at the point that it does. It's like the universe
Absolutely.
is telling you something.
Yeah,
So is there any
absolutely.
type of analysis like that?
I don't go into that much depth on it because I think, as I might have said earlier on the call, I'm a true believer that every single thing happens for a reason. So whether it be um, a winged animal that comes along, or a four-legged animal, or a conversation that you're having with somebody that provokes a thought, every single type of synergistic energy or awareness of something that comes into our awareness comes in for a reason. And
Hmm.
it's up to me to unravel it. So whether it be I'm driving along and I hear a song on the radio, but that song took me back to when I was 16 years old. There's a
Hmm.
reason why that song came on and it took me back to when I was 16. I've got to unravel that now, not look at it as, oh, it was just a coincidence. No. There's bigger signs and greater powers at play for us to unravel some of these messages.
Yeah, I mean, in our Buddhist belief, with when things happen, we believe they happen. Like if somebody shows up in front of you, some event happens. Like there's like these different, and it is related to energy. Like it's
It's
like there's
energy.
these energy type of things that happen, whether it's positive or negative or kind of like indeterminate. There's always some
Hmm.
level of something, and
Yeah,
whether it's like telling you that something great is going to happen, or it's a foreboding, or like, oh, what does this sign mean? Why is this happening? And you do try to figure out like, okay, why did this eagle come down and grab a dove in front of me? Like that's actually something that happened to me when I was a kid. I was like
really.
17,
Wow.
and an eagle came down in my yard and grabbed a dove and took it. And I kind
Wow.
of looked at it from my Native American background. It's like that's actually like ending of innocence. It's like it was like
Hmm.
a symbolic of like a change in innocence level that something was going on, and there was something
For
actually
sure.
happening. And then this animal went and did this in front of me at the same time that was happening, and I was like, wow,
Mm,
that was
wow.
very. I kind of read it as the things that were happening. I said, wow, that it kind of confirms the things that are happening. But
Yeah,
yeah, like
absolutely.
to
I
be in
lost you
tune
there.
with that, was interesting.
Can you
Oh,
just repeat that? I just lost you there.
what I'm saying is like to be in tune with that moment of that
Hmm.
eagle coming down and actually taking a dove in front of me
Yes.
is like
Yes.
very symbolic within indigenous culture, like what that can mean. Multiple like
Right.
um you know practices could interpret what that means, but from
Absolutely.
the Cherokee or Blackfoot point of view, you could interpret what that means. But
Yeah.
I saw it as wow, that's like life
That's
showing me something in real time.
And it's pretty profound that you got to witness it. So to me, I don't know as in-depth detail in terms of the Cherokee or the Blackfoot um, symbolism. I'm not as in-depth about it, but to me, the bigger message and the bigger sign is that you got to witness it and you got to feel into your own energy body. What does that mean for you? Yes, we can recognize that other people can tell us this is what it means, but we have to use our own discernment whether that's true for us.
Yeah,
And
I
I
did
think
look
that
at
is often the challenging piece.
yeah, at the time there was some things going on where I was kind of, 17 and I was moving from one phase to another in my
Mhm.
kind of
Mhm.
adolescence and
Yeah,
growing up, and there was some serious things going on. And it felt like it was like a change
that's
of
right.
the age of innocence to an age of experience,
That's right.
like a
That's right.
Blakean idea, like William Blake. You
Yeah,
have the songs of innocence, the songs of
yeah.
experience. I was very much into that. I was reading a lot
Mm,
of Victorian poetry. I love William Blake. And the way at the
mm.
time, I was like, I was reading the songs of innocence and experience. And then that thing happened. And so I was kind of framing it from what I'd been reading, but also knowing about Cherokee history from my great grandmother. And I'm
Awesome.
like, oh, I can interpret it with what she's saying too. But I felt my own truth of what was going
Good.
on inside. And I took my own kind of feel for what it was. But I think it's like some
Yeah.
people could just look at that and say, oh, and not connect it to themselves at all.
Mm,
And, just think it's an outside event. And I think
no.
maybe that's a different way to have, so like a spiritual leader might tell you to maybe look at it differently.
Yeah. And that seems like a very profound process, experience, should I say, to be able to witness. So one obviously very jarring and one that's locked into your memory for you to be able to share today. But even the day-to-day conversations and interactions we have can also be pretty profound, but it's the emphasis that we put on it
Hmm.
is what it's telling,
Yeah, I
right?
guess it
We
doesn't
can
have to be
dismiss
like
it.
it doesn't have to be a crucible moment. It doesn't have to be as extreme as what that happened. It can be a something that you don't think is that important. It's
Yeah,
like a micro level event. But
that's
like you
right.
said, every input that you get as a person on this planet,
Yeah.
you should try to, one of the feelings is that, like, the idea is you listen to Gaia. Like, you listen to the planet, you listen to everything around
That's
you, you
right.
don't just ignore it, right? And
Yes.
then little things actually have more meaning. Things that you
Yes.
maybe would have passed over and not think mean anything at all. You start
Absolutely.
adding up.
Absolutely. But it's us to sharpen our listening, right? We've got so much clutter, there's so much noise out there that doesn't allow us to really listen to the crunch of the leaves when we walk on them, to hear the ripples in the water, or to hear what Gaia, Mother Earth, really has to whisper for us. Because there's too many distractions.
Yeah, it's like if you go for a walk in the woods and then you have your AirPods on.
Mm-hmm.
Like, my whole point being, is that I go for a walk in the woods, I don't have anything in my ears. I'm not listening.
That's
I
right.
turn my phone off. I don't
Yeah.
have a headphone on. I'm
Yeah.
actually I want to hear, the brook. I want to
Yes.
hear the wind. I want to experience what the woods is. I don't want to just have a soundtrack going on in my head. That's nice if
Mm-hmm.
you're a jogger,
Mm-hmm.
but I think
Mm-hmm.
sometimes we have so many things today that
Mm-hmm.
disconnect us from the world on
That's right.
purpose, to kind of not, so we don't have to pay attention. And I think that
That's right.
maybe might be a problem.
I think it's a huge problem. It's a huge problem that this constant stimulation of the outside world, it's addictive, and it cannot it can be so much further from the truth of what it is really begging for us to do. The opportunity for us to go inwards and listen inwards is far greater than all this noise. So if we look at it from a place of contrast, as loud as all this external clutter is, new music here, new streaming device here, new show here, new episodes, new movie, all this external stuff, as loud as that is, our internal piece of who we are is equally begging for our attention. Because
Yeah, I
we've
think
got to
that's
create a balance, right?
yeah. I mean, that's part of the thing why I like like Tai Chi and meditation, where you just try to go inward and just, breathing exercises. Because I lived in Japan for 2 years,
Nice.
and living in Tokyo from 2004 to 2006, it gave me a totally different point of view compared to an American point of view. I'd never been in an Eastern culture, and then
Mm,
I was totally enveloped in it in my day job. I had to be in it, and
Wow.
it was radically different than anything I had to deal with. I had to deal with a concept in business where they had zero defect mentality, where
Mm.
any defect is not is just as high as, like, a zero is just as bad as a 10. And so
Wow.
in that mentality is a totally different business concept than American business concept.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of the American business guys were having a really hard time with it, but I immediately say, well, that's the way they see it. So
Right.
why shouldn't we accept it? Because that's what we're here. This is where we
Right.
are. This is what they believe. But they had a
Mm-hmm.
bunch of other Americans who were like, well, we got to get them to believe the way we think. And I'm like, why?
Uh-huh. Right.
We're in this
Right.
market. We're trying to sell in this market. This is what they believe. This is how they do business. If they make
Mm-hmm.
a mistake, they go and invite people to a coliseum, and the chairman bows and apologizes. Do American
Mm.
guys do that? No,
No.
they do that. And so it's like when you're in that kind of world, I said, why not take on those things? Because this is the market we're in.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I got a lot of resistance to say, because the different people, the American guys were like, oh, we got to get them to think our way. Okay. I say I got a lot of resistance from the business people who were just saying, well, let's just make this operation operate like they do in Connecticut.
Mm.
But we weren't in Connecticut. We were in Tokyo, Japan.
Right. Right. And I think that's the big shift in, especially in the business world, of wanting for it to work in a different way that is based on the culture. So the culture in Japan is very different operationally, and perhaps maybe more sensitive to people, whereas perhaps some of the cultures in America, North America, the Western world of living is less about the people, but more about the doing.
Yeah. It was more about like a top down management perspective, and maybe not respecting the culture that you're in. Like you're in a multinational company, you're in different zones,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
but your attitude is the American zone is how everything should be. And
Right.
sometimes, like, maybe that's not the right way to do things. At least
Right.
my perspective was like, if we're in these different zones, maybe we should be culturally sensitive to the zones that we're in, and
Mm-hmm.
not
Mm-hmm.
try to dictate from the top down that that's the only way. Because I've been
Right.
a very expansive type of person in my music. I like to be very expansive. I don't want to be caught in any lane. I like to be like, bring Eastern
Mm-hmm.
ideas, bring Western ideas, uh, mix things up between
Yeah.
jazz and rock or hip hop and spoken word. I like to not be pinned down.
Mm-hmm.
And I hate it when somebody tries to say, well, you should just stay
Yeah.
in this. And like, why? Why should I stay in one lane? Because like I don't think that way. I kind of go all over the place. So what's wrong with actually expressing myself in that true form?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. But it's also about creating balance, right? So talking a little bit about energy and the different types of energy that we had mentioned. So there's a masculine energy and there's a feminine energy. The masculine energy, both energies we all carry. I really don't care what gender you identify as. You have
Mhm.
both components.
Yeah.
So the masculine is very action oriented, action focused, and very strategic in that standpoint. The feminine is more nurturing, more compassionate, and more loving. So what I'm hearing from you is your experience in Japan is more balanced because there is a more compassionate, there is a more considerate component to who you are as an employee, as a client, and how we are operating as a business. So there is that softer, nurturing component. Whereas perhaps in America, North America, it's more action, very masculine driven. Just
Mm.
action, do, don't think, don't feel, just do, which I think in itself is proving the imbalance in showing how businesses are being run and operated, and the longevity of that business and how that shift is happening. The tipping point has already taken place of how employee engagement is to be changed, to have more empathy in the workplace, to have more compassion, to not look at your employees as they're just a number. So looking at that from a more balanced perspective, I think is really interesting to see it in very many different parts of the world. So, yeah.
Well, one of the things I actually had yesterday, and they were talking about, they were like a spiritual advisor as well, and they were talking about like feminine and male energy in terms of like receiver and
Yeah.
giver
Okay.
concepts. And
Mhm.
they were also talking about like energy and being able to balance energy. So it seems to be a common kind of theme. And
Yeah.
in my music, I pointed out that one of the things I did early in my career is I went into myself and I found like a feminine side of myself and I named her
Mm.
Josephine Electric. And she's like a fictional character I created as part of my
Mhm.
music. And I used
Nice.
electronic devices to actually create her and actually do her voice and pitch my voice up to actually do that character, to be able to do
Beautiful.
some work I had done that was based on a more sensitive type of character that actually needed to be
Mhm.
female. And so when I
Nice.
voiced her songs, I'm actually in a female voice doing her songs. And it kind of got me into this business because I suddenly went from a couple thousand people listening to like 70,000 people listening when I
Wow.
introduced the idea of Josephine. And then the whole
Wow.
idea of Phantom Electric Ghost was when I presented this, I presented it as a ghost. So I didn't
Right.
dress up like Josephine, I dressed up like a phantom. And I had a
Right.
phantom outfit. And when the female voice came out, I had a phantom mask. And so sometimes there'll be a male voice coming out and a female voice coming out when I play in New York or Boston. But you couldn't tell if I was male or female because my idea
Right.
was is I don't want to get into the idea of being gender bending. I want it to be a ghost
I lost you
and
again.
then the ghost to be male or female at any point in time in the performance. And so then I was able to do something I always wanted to do and it worked. And even to
Mm.
this day, it still works. And it was just a way for me to be able to express that feminine side of myself
Yeah.
in a way that I felt comfortable, and it actually seemed to get the audience to understand it, which I didn't know if they would.
Mhm.
but
Mhm.
but
Good
that's what
for
I was trying to
you.
say. It's like, yeah, it's I think it's in line with what you're saying because I think I found that I had this female and
Yeah.
male inside of myself,
Yeah.
and it was maybe always there, and then I found a way to be more direct about it. But I was still
Right.
indirect because I had a phantom mask.
Right. Right. But that's such a beautiful analogy. It's a beautiful way for you to contextualize that and put it into fruition. So well done to you. But I'm also makes me a little more curious to see what the real part of you looks like and how you're exhibiting some of the more feminine qualities or some of the more softer qualities in who you are and in balance with some of the more masculine qualities of who you are and how we all sift through them every single day. But it's a natural part of who we are, so to welcome it. So good for you for doing that. Yeah.
Yeah, I was never sure how it was gonna get taken. I mean, I actually did a show, and I was actually part of, like, a hip hop collective that I didn't know how they really gonna take it, and,
Hmm.
I was very surprised that I found that a lot of the people that I thought were gonna be, like, really against it
Wow.
were wearing a mask. They were very overly masculine, but when they
Wow.
actually saw me, they actually talked to me, and they didn't feel threatened, and they didn't act the way I thought they would act.
I
I
lost you
found
there
that
for a
they're
second.
Oh, sorry. Can you hear me?
I can. Yeah.
What I'm saying is, like, I was on a lot of people that were overly masculine. They're kinda super
Hmm.
macho, and I thought
Right.
they would not react well to the idea of a Josephine Electric, and I was
Mm.
very shocked that they had this very macho image, but that actually was a mask, that their
Yeah.
macho stage image was not really them either, in the same way Josephine was maybe a different version of myself, that
Right.
the image they had on stage wasn't exactly them, and so they actually
Mm.
didn't have a problem with me. And I
Mm.
was like, wow, there's like people wear masks all the time.
All
And
the
you
time.
don't really know if that person is really who they're presenting because
Yeah.
it's part of their act.
It's part of the act that we've all been perhaps, I want to say indoctrinated, but that sounds a really aggressive word, that we've been taught to wear. So regardless of what gender you identify in or how you move through the world or what you do in life, there's an element of mask that has been taught for us to wear, which in my version is part of the clutter that it's time to let go of. Because being your authentic self and being in synergy with your soul, I think now is the time. It's been a long time coming, but I think it's up to the bravery of each individual to really step into it. So I'm glad you have done what you have done to allow people to witness and experience their other versions or a removal of the mask, even if it's on a temporary level, for them to truly feel who they are. So well done for you.
But I think it's really important to kind of dive into yourself. And being a songwriter is kind of like what we do is we take a lot of pain that we deal with a lot of emotional events. And I think the
Yes,
key of being a creator, being an actor, being a painter, being a musician is we take those really impactful moments and we turn them into art. And
yes,
it seems to be, that a lot of times things that are painful make the best art. And you're like, okay,
mm,
why do you have to be in pain to make really good art? But
yeah,
it tends to be a self-fulfilling thing. I mean, you can be happy and create really good funk. You can create really nice
sure.
dance track. So you don't necessarily have to be in pain all the time.
Hmm.
But
Hmm.
there's some songs that are very impactful to a lot of people do come from being able to recall that and then turn it into something positive.
Right,
And I
right,
think it's like
right.
if maybe some people who don't have the ability to take a negative energy and do something creative with it to kind of have a cathartic moment. Is that something you try to teach people? Because I think creatives, we kind of do that every day with our art. But if you're not a
Yes.
creative, how do you take that negative thing and make it, be more cathartic?
Through journaling, through spending time in nature and being outside, essentially getting out of the mind, because it's the mind that can take us on a tailspin of overthinking, overanalyzing, overdoing a whole bunch of stuff that we shouldn't be doing, and moving that into a creative outlet, be it journaling, be it coloring, be it painting, doing something that's there's no judgment of what the outcome is going to be, but allowing that expression to take form through you as a conduit. So for you, it's music. For others, it might be painting. For some, it might be dance. For some, it might be cooking or baking. So finding another way to express it in a more creative way, I think, is crucial, because when we get it, if we don't do it, it can get stuck in our mind and go on a loop. And that's
Mhm.
not serving for anybody, for you as an individual, and definitely not the people around you.
Because that's when like human beings will get into addictive or destructive behaviors because they
Mhm.
get into that loop and then they
Yes,
try to resolve it with a non-positive action,
yes,
or something that's self-destructive or not healthy. So
that's
do you
right.
have to in your practice, do you try to, deal with people who are at that state and try to get them on a better path?
Absolutely. Yes, I've had a number of clients who suffered from depression or heightened anxiety, ADHD, and different labels, if you will, that we have learned to justify in our world. It's ultimately about being able to transform that energy. So transform the destructive piece into a positive attribute. And how do I go about doing that? Is through awareness, is through taking a step back and observing it, and not necessarily engaging in it, but observing it. And in the observing in itself, you're allowed to transform it, because energy never dies. We know that.
Mhm.
We just have the capability of transforming it. So I support individuals how to transform it. Just as your same analogy of a discourse in a harmony, how do I shift that so it becomes in harmony? I do that with emotions. So emotion, a heavy emotion is showing up, a guilt, a shame. okay, so why is that showing up, and how can we put it in a place of love and compassion? What needs to happen from that space in between? And that's part of the process and the journey that I take individuals on, to take control of their emotions and clear the clutter. I think is the bigger words that are coming to me right now that I'm feeling that might resonate.
The bright shining light, how did you come about with that term
It
for
was
you for
actually it was a channeled word that came in. I was working on a contract with a business that I used to do strategic planning and event management for, and I'm sitting at my desk, and all of a sudden these three words flew into my head. And I was like, okay, I like these. I better save the URL for it. I didn't know what I was going to do with it because I was heavily into the corporate world at that point,
Mm,
and I had no idea. I was nudging into more of the spiritual world a little bit more on a part-time basis, on a personal level. So I banked it, and before I knew it, within 5 years, my life changed upside down pretty much. And that's when I knew this is why it came into my awareness for me to do something with.
yeah,
Nothing
I had
happens
like
by accident, right?
yeah, I mean, I've been doing music since I
Okay,
was
sorry, I can't
17.
hear you.
Sorry, can you hear me again? Can you hear me? All right. Do you hear me
One more
now?
time. I do. Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Um, what the idea of like my Phantom Electric Ghost concept and my expansive sound all came in like 2016, and I've been a musician for like 17 years. And
Mm,
suddenly I came up with the idea of Phantom Electric Ghost. There was the kind of idea like Ghost in the Machine, like the idea that
right.
I deal with synthesizers, and the music is
Mm,
created from electricity. And we actually
right.
manipulate the electricity into sound waves, and I actually do sound design. Part of my
Nice.
music is I actually take waveforms and make sounds from waveforms like triangle waves, sine waves. All those waves
Beautiful.
I actually use to create tones.
Nice.
And all my instruments are, have a lot in common with the human being. We have electricity going through us. These machines have electricity.
Hmm.
And there was one of the guys who built my machines is a Dr. Moog. And when he was asked about his synthesizers, he said that he felt like they had consciousness because they
Hmm.
are analog, they were hand built, they were transistor, and they had a lot of
Hmm.
electricity flowing through them, and each one, he said, had a character and an
Hmm.
essence that is somewhat organic, even though it's a machine. And I was
Yes.
always very awestruck by the fact that this doctor who created this machine
Yes.
felt like it was connected spiritually and like through this electricity, and it was very very powerful to me why I got into synthesizers, and I have a lot of his sense, Dr.
Mm.
Mode's sense, and because they feel when I use them that they do
God,
have
yeah.
like their own mind. They feel like they have their own mind. They feel like they have their own consciousness. If you can hear me. Maybe
No.
I lost again. Maybe your
There
headphone
we go.
lost.
Yeah.
What I'm
It
saying is
might.
like these synthesizers feel like they have their own spirit, their own soul, their
Yes.
own mind, and I kind of let them tell me what I'm gonna do.
Good for
I
you.
don't try to control them as much as they feed things to me, and then I go with what they give me. And
What a beautiful gift. What a beautiful gift that you have, to be in dialogue with them and recognize them as an aspect of consciousness, because ultimately they are. Be it a plant or be it a food source, there is consciousness behind it. But you working with it on a much synergistic level allows their awareness to flow through you, which no doubt expands your purpose and your enjoyment possibly of working with those instruments too. So that's beautiful. And I have no doubts that there is an element of consciousness that is streaming through them in every single node, in every single version of of that device in itself. So I'd be curious to for you to do perhaps an experiment with other aspects of it. Um, the sacred geometry components, so the notes and the tones that are connected to that, what kind of sounds would that come into fruition with? So yeah, there's a whole slew of other questions that are flowing into my mind to ask you actually.
Yeah, I mean, I actually I had dealt with a synthesis that actually connects her synthesis to plants. She actually
Yeah,
takes like transponders and actually connects to plants and mushrooms and lets
yeah,
those plants actually send her signals
see
and
that
then
video
use it,
not on.
and she uses it in her work. She actually, connects
Yeah,
it to organic material to use in her work.
right.
And I was like, wow, that is like I think she's feeling the same things I'm feeling, but she took it
Yes.
to actually connect with nature directly.
Beautiful. Yeah, and I have actually seen a lot of devices out there that do that, which is beautiful. But it just awes me of how we can use technology for such a positive connection with nature and a different element of consciousness. I'm floored at some of the devices and mechanisms that people actually do use. So it's powerful stuff. It's really powerful stuff. So
So I just wanted to let people know we did reach our hour mark, and so like these sessions usually go in a way that I kind of do a stream of consciousness, kind of just a conversational type of
mhm,
program. So I do want to thank you again for being on the program,
you're welcome.
and I want to encourage people to go to your website. Are there any other things in terms of how to reach you? Is everything at that website, or is there another more information people need to be told?
Well, it's really at the website. Social media platforms, Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn can be connected there, either under Bright Shining Light or Naranjan Nota. And I'd encourage you, if you're oscillating or contemplating on delving further, is I do offer a free 30-minute consult and we can unravel and see where you're at and support you that way. But thank you so much for having me in your show. Thank you.
Well, I think it's very positive. I try to bring my audience like we've branched out into not just talking music. We started
Yeah,
in 2016 in that way, but we've wanted to bring in other people and actually talk to other points of view that are not just about music. But
definitely.
oh, again, sorry.
Yeah,
Can you
that's
hear
all
me?
right.
We've
Yeah.
made a choice to kind of expand what we talk about to
Mhm.
include. Normally, we just talk to musicians or other producers, but we've been
Right.
trying to bring in other people and other points of view that
Sure.
some people would say, well, how does that fit? But I believe that like it's expansive.
Yeah.
You start to open your mind and talk to a spiritual person that's going to be a spiritual guide. Actually, a lot of musicians, they follow gurus, they followed
Mhm.
spiritual guides. They that is part of like
Mhm.
music. Go back to the Beatles.
Yes.
There's
Yeah.
a lot of there's a connection. I can show there's a connection.
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
thank you again for being on the program. Very happy that you were here. I want everybody to make sure they check out brightshininglight.com. And
Beautiful.
thank you again for being on the program.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Good night.